You are listening to Attractive Relationships, the podcast where we dive deep into the art and science of relationships and communication. I'm Rico Armstrong, your host and advocate for attractive, happy relationships. In a world where relationships play a crucial role in our personal and professional lives, understanding how to communicate to connect with others is essential. Transform your communication skills to increase your social status, your social confidence, and help you gain the best relationships you can have. Welcome to Attractive Relationships. All right, welcome to another episode of Attractive Relationships. I am Coach Rico, and a really good question was asked after the last episode when I talk about the painful divorce that I went through after 9 years of marriage. And the question is, how do you move past that? Right? I think most of us have been through a really significant breakup. And if you haven't been through one, congratulations. But I bet you know somebody who has gone through that, and it can be very difficult. So when you are in a serious relationship and you are in love with somebody or had less loved somebody, how do you move past the relationship that then just has fallen apart, has broken up? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, what I'm going to tell you today is simply my own personal experience and how I got through this. Maybe for some of you, you'll see some similarities in how you've gotten through it. Or if you're in a relationship where you're like really considering is breaking it off the right decision. Nobody can answer that but you. But hopefully this will kind of give you a perspective that helps you make the right decision for you. Or if you are in this situation, you find yourself in this situation, maybe there's some things that might help you move through a breakup that's really tough. Um, so how do you move past it? I think before we could talk about moving past a really tough breakup or divorce, we have to talk about what are we moving past? And what I found for me was the hard part about going through the separation and divorce after 9 years of marriage was probably the most obvious part, and that is the emotions, because the emotions are not very straightforward, right? Sometimes when you go through a difficult situation, the emotions can be very simple, like somebody cut me off in traffic and now I'm upset or angry, or something like that. But with the relationships, they're more complicated. And the emotions that were hard for me to move past were the emotions of feeling shame, like I wasn't good enough uh, for for my then wife, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't good enough. Uh, I felt like I wasn't good enough for a lot of my friends all of a sudden because they had I lost a lot of friends in that because they cast judgment and picked sides um, of who they decided they wanted to be friends with or whatever gossip that they chose to believe. I was battling a huge amount of anger because I felt betrayed that my then wife was spreading gossip and rumors that were vastly, and the majority of which were not true and not accurate. There's sadness and there's heartbreak, there's regret. I spent 9 years and pouring my emotional and physical resources into this thing that I was intending to last and for all my days on this planet. And it just seemed like those 9 years were a waste, and that had a feeling of regret. Uh, every emotion that was felt, the one thing that I can say is there was nothing good. There was like sometimes people joke nowadays, like when they have a divorce, it's almost like a party for some people. That was not the case for me. There were no good feelings that happened as a result of my 9 year marriage being broken up. And instead, all of these negative emotions just left me really confused. It was hard to make sense of things because on the one hand, it's like, this isn't all my fault. But on the other hand, it is kind of my fault. And on the other hand, was there something I could have done better? And on the other hand, but I really tried the best that I could. And on the other hand, I'm really, really angry and upset and I don't want to go back. But on the other hand, I wish this never happened. And it just leaves your heart and your mind in a lot of confusion. And the other struggle with these mixed emotions that was hard to move past was simply being alone with those emotions. And it's a weird spot in my head to be in because on the one hand, it's kind of like, I want to be alone because after all this, and it is trauma, at least for me, it's a version of trauma, it's emotional trauma. And now I want to protect myself emotionally from everybody because not only did the not only did my wife hurt me and what she said and did, but friends that I had lost that I had considered to be really, really close, who I didn't think that would be so quick to judge or take sides based off of one person's story, they did things too. And so now I was like, well, I want to be isolated. I don't want to give my heart out to other people. My emotions and my feelings are just too raw and I can't handle more trauma. Hey guys, real quick, I'd love to connect with you beyond these episodes, which is why I'm excited to tell you that Attractive Relationships recently started an exclusive newsletter just for you. You'll get behind-the-scenes stories and additional exclusive content to aid in building your personal attractive relationships. So if you'd like to be kept in the loop, simply click the link in the description below the episode. But on the flip side of that, being isolated is one of the worst things because when you're alone with your thoughts and emotions, where there's nothing good in those emotions, that means there's nothing good in the thoughts. And you can imagine when you're alone with those thoughts, it's like the devil just plays with your mind and makes you think very bad things to do to yourself or others. And so you need to be with other people. And so all of this makes a breakup a really tough struggle. So how was I able to move past all of that? Um, Unfortunately, I've had so much experience with pain and depression that uh, I knew some things that I had to do, and I'm going to share those things with you. And they almost just came instinctually. Um, but I also learned one other thing, specifically when it comes to relationships, not just of a romantic nature, but of any kind. There are three things. I would say the most immediate thing that I did was I leaned on the friends that I could rely on. And at that particular time, I had a relatively new friend who had recently been through a divorce, and they understood exactly where I was coming from and allowed me to have that safe space with them where there wasn't shame and there wasn't judgment. There was another friend that I had known uh, that we had kind of lost touch a little bit, but when um, when they were when we were in touch, when we were hanging out because of proximity, that we lived closer together, their marriage was something that I was able to help with. And even though that marriage ended up into a divorce, they appreciated what I was able to do for them, not just during their marriage while it lasted, but even after the divorce. And so I reached out to one of my friends in that relationship, and they too allowed me a safe space to vent and to share emotions guilt-free, free of judgment. And then the third person was my father. And my father may have been, well, I mean, they were all very instrumental. I won't say one was more important than the other. But again, my father also somebody who's been through it understood what I was going through, knew my wife longer than any of the friends that I was keeping around at the time. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would be here. That's how painful that relationship, that the ending of that relationship was. And so that would be the if you have at least one person that can create that safe space for you, when everything else around that safe space is evoking those shameful, guilty, angry emotions, that one person who has can be your safe space and have the patience to let you vent, to have the grace to let you just say whatever it is that you want to say, and not be and without you feeling afraid that they're going to judge you for your worst moment in that time. Like, that is monumental. So that was the first thing. Is find at least one person that can create that safe space for you. The second thing that worked for me is I ended up just diving into my work. Now, I don't know how healthy this was, but what I will say for me, that my friends can't be with me every day, most days. I had to fill up my time with something. And fortunately for me, I found work that was very fulfilling. As a personal trainer and a coach, the focus that I had to do for my job was to focus on everybody else. And this is again sign language, you just dive right into it. And it was very therapeutic for me. Not only did it keep me busy, but because my job was to focus on other people and making sure that they succeed, what it also allowed me to do is realize that even though my struggles were really bad, uh, everybody struggles. Now, they may not struggle to the level that you are currently going through, but they are struggling. Nobody does not struggle. And to be able to focus and realize that I'm not the only one. All right, my friends helped me to realize I'm not the only one to go through this experience, and they provided that safe space. My work kept me busy, what kept my mind off of all those negative emotions, and also reminded me that everybody is going through it, and a lot of times we just don't even know it. And so that was very, very helpful for me. And the third thing that I did was, once I got into a better emotional and mental space, I started to really do self-improvement to understand better how relationships work and how I can be a better communicator. Again, my job kind of lended itself to me doing the research on the communication part. But I started to realize that if I'm going to have these relationships again, like, I don't want to relive that traumatic experience, because trauma is one of the only things that really changes who you fundamentally are in life. You know, And I didn't want to experience that again. I didn't want to change who I am. So that's the reason why I was like, okay, what could I have done better legitimately? How do relationships really work? Why did my marriage work as long as it did, even though it had some problems? And then what was it at the end that made it collapse? How can I then be better, not just for the next romantic relationship, but for any relationship, whether it's a friend, whether it's my relationship with my coworkers, because any relationship that you have takes the risk of you being heartbroken or betrayed in some sort of way. And to be able, so it's imperative that we understand, how do we choose the best relationships for us? And how can I make sure that I show up in the best way possible for those relationships? So those are the three things, find at least one person that creates that safe space for you. Dive into something that keeps you busy, because when you do that, it's going to, at least for that time period, not leave you alone with whatever your thoughts might be. And for me, between friends and work, it took about a year for me to get to a place where I can then really focus on the self-improvement part as I became more emotionally sober, if you will. And after that, I started to date. And what I started to realize is that I was able to not only more quickly identify relationships that worked for me or that didn't, relationships that I was good for or the ones that weren't. But inevitably, you're going to date and you're going to go through another breakup and it's going to be hurtful. And if it's not super serious, like you haven't been married for 9 years or for a long period of time, if it's just been a few months or a year, even, what I have found for me is that it took 30 days to get through a relatively new relationship. Right. If I had been dating somebody, I remember this one girl I dated, when we broke up, I thought, man, this could be the one. And she broke up with me. That was really, really difficult. And somebody said it takes 30 days to get past those kind of relationships. And they were right. At least that's the case for me. But it was the same process. Keep yourself busy, find your friends who can give you that safe space, continue to self-improve. And if you do that, you can get past, at least for me, I was able to get past the hard and emotional parts of a relationship. So again, that's my story. Let me know if you were able to relate. You can always comment. You can always reach out to me on social media, Coach Rico Strong on Instagram, on TikTok. You can reach out, DM me. Let me know if this story resonates with you, if it's found it helpful in any kind of way. And on the next episode, we're going to talk about some of the things that I learned that would have helped prevent the things that created the heartbreak in the first place. Until next time, guys, I'll see you then. As we come to the end of another episode of Attractive Relationships, I want to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, if this episode brought you any value, I would truly appreciate it if you shared this podcast with anyone that you think could benefit from our discussions on effective communication and relationship building. Until next time, remember, great relationships start with great communication. So stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep building those attractive relationships.